Hey, what's happening, family? It's your man Mark Black. You know what time it is. Welcome. Welcome to your Sucker Free Saturday. First of all, let me give you all a shout out. Those of you who have popped your name in the chat, remember, family, the rules. If you're here, I don't care if you lurk, but pop your name in the chat so we can shout you out and show you some love. Shout out to Maiden Dade. I see you, fam. Shout out to Miss Denny, as always. Brother Ted, shout out to you. Peace be one to you. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Fam, we're going to do work today. So while there might be a little joking, maybe, not much. Right, we got some fat to get on our heads today, so make sure you get your drinks. Make sure you get yourself situated. Right, grab your pen and paper. Shout out to you, Onyx. Welcome to the Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Shout out to you, Zulu. I see you, fam. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Shalom, Sister August. Glad to see you. Welcome to the broadcast. Today, fam, we are going to continue a bit of our discussion about the acculturation of ADOS people into supporting the status quo. Karis, I see you. Salute. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. As you well know, family, wait, before we get started, a little bit of house cleaning, all right? By the way, peace to you, Animus. Make sure you don't work too hard. Glad to have you. Taj Marie's in the house. I see you. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Fam, please take the time to visit my Patreon. There's a link in there in the chat. Also, there's a link in the description field. Consider $1 a month, couple of bucks. I'm asking you to put $5 on it, but every little bit helps. And it all goes to support my work, and it's definitely appreciated. All right. Also, fam, there's some links in the description field of every video to reports, books, resources to help you to get up on why ADOS advocacy is necessary and the data that we need in order to pursue this advocacy effectively. So make sure that you check out those resources. They're always available to you on every video, whether I'm broadcasting live or not. Right. And that can do nothing but help you to become a stronger, better advocate for your people. Also, allies, if you're interested in learning more about why ADOS is here to fight for what we're here to fight for, there's resources there that should be able to help you as well. OK, so, fam, we talked about Miss Denny. All right. I see you, sister. I appreciate the love. Right. Passing the collection plate already. Ain't nothing wrong with it. We've talked about, family, the differences between enculturation and acculturation as a foreign group within the dominant ethnic culture, or I should say the ethnic makeup here of America, right? We experience acculturation. Okay, and acculturation is the imposition of a foreign culture upon us as ADOS people, right? And we can see that some of the acculturation that we receive is beneficial. It's survival based, but there's a lot of our acculturation that is maladaptive, that puts us in trick bags, messed up positions, not just us as individuals, but us as a collective, us as ADOS, right? And so one of the things that I mentioned is utilized in order to continue to acculturate us generation after generation after generation into the acceptance of white supremacy / white domination is through the educational system. So today we're going to discuss the effects, the ramifications of our children being educated under the current system, right? The current educational system. And we're also going to discuss ways and means by which to go and combat some of the things that they will experience, because all of us, to a one, are mostly products of this current educational system. Whether you went to private school or public school, fam, we all have gone to school for the most part. And thus, the systems that are in play in the educational sphere have gone a great ways towards reinforcing the acculturation that keeps the dominant society dominant, that keeps us acting in the interests of white supremacy. By the way, shout out to Sister Joan. Hey, sister, you take your time, you contribute what you're able. You know me. I appreciate just the thought. Shout out to my beloved brother BK Hammer. Peace to you, fam. Shout out to Vernell. Peace to you as well. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Now, let's go ahead and talk about a few things. Before we go to the teaching screen, I want to share with you a quote that is attributed to Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. For those of you who are unfamiliar with him, Vladimir Lenin was the leader of the communist revolution in Russia, right? And one of the things that he is reputed to have said is, and I quote, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted," unquote. Right? That's going to set the tone for us in our discussion. So without further ado, let's get to it. First, we're going to take a look at some information discussing the racial breakdown of America's public school teachers, right? Because you can see here in this article, right, that based on education trends, now this was a little while back, right? It said that approximately 50.3% of the student body for 2015 school year would be people of color, right? That means motherfucking Latinos, Asians, Arabs, etc., and black folk, ADOS folk, okay? Now, here's something to note. While the educational base, in other words, the number of students, fam, has changed as far as the representation of people who are non-white, when we look at the breakdown of who's teaching our children, what we see is that the number of teachers. Now, I didn't look at the data for administrators, so that's a good question and it's something we can look at, right? But the breakdown of the teachers shows that overwhelmingly, teachers, the whites, run the educational system. They're the frontline operatives in our educational system. And according to this information as of 2015, 2016, right, white teachers made up over 80% of the teachers that are out there, with black people coming in at 6.7. Now, of course, this doesn't break out ADOS versus black immigrants or whatever, Africans and so on and so forth. So it's safe to assume that this 6.7% includes teachers like that one who cut off that little girl who was talking about the murder of Trayvon, the little valedictorian girl. Yeah, that black teacher who was Ethiopian, I believe, or Eritrean, cut her off. He's also counted in this 6.7%. Biracial teachers, about 1.4%. Native Island Pacific or Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander to the right of the decimal point, and so on and so forth. And Hispanics. We actually have more Hispanic teachers teaching our kids than we do black ones. And trust me, fam, that's actually by design, right? We've all seen over the years with the advent of desegregation that what that's actually meant for black teachers is that many black teachers have found themselves out of the field. They either have been shunted off to schools where the high student load, various social issues such as like hunger in schools, we had children that grew up during the crack epidemic who now have behavioral issues and things like that. That's where they shunted our black teachers off to, right? Meanwhile, the vast majority of teachers in regular schools are white folks and Latino folks or Hispanic folks, all right? So there's the breakdown on that piece. Now, fam, that's important for us to know. By the way, shout out to you, SM Bonner. And yes, you are absolutely right. The school administration is like an organized crime syndicate. First of all, they have an inordinate amount of control over their local schools. Plus, many of those teachers, or I should say those administrators, have made connections with the school board that is supposed to be their primary means of oversight, right? So they've made these political ties, these political connections to the very group that are supposed to oversee their activities and their behaviors. So essentially, the administrators of schools and the school boards work together in concert to maintain the status quo of a particular school district, the curriculum, the different pedagogical techniques that are used, the different didactics that are operated within the school districts. Fam, it's all of a piece, right? You have your frontline teachers who are primarily white folks, right? You have some degree of black administration, but that black administration is answerable to a school board that is usually white, even if it's in a primarily black school district. You feel me? So what ends up happening is that you have this constant reinforcement of the methods, policies, procedures, and so on and so forth that work to the detriment of ADOS students, because no one there involved at any given point in the system has necessarily the interest of ADOS students at heart. By the way, shout out to you, Toolbox. I see you, fam. Welcome to the Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. And you're right, S.M. Bonner. White supremacy is endemic in the educational system. Don't you worry, fam. As always, I bring the invoices. We don't do receipts. We talk about what's owed. So let's go right back to the teaching screen, shall we? Here is a report, and I will, as always, put a link to the report in the chat so that you can download the report and follow along for yourselves. I'm going to have to actually make sure I can share this thing because I actually linked to it. Let's see, share. Here we go. This way, fam, you'll be able to go ahead and check that out. Right? This link will allow you to share. It's in my Google Docs drive. So you'll be able to go ahead and share it, download it, the whole 9 yards. Actually, yep, there you go. All right. So, fam, we're going to talk about this today. All right. This report by Bree Picower, right, out of New York University, discusses the whiteness of teaching. Right? How white teachers maintain and enact dominant racial ideologies. Right? Now, I need for y'all to understand something right out of the get-go. This isn't a report that posits that they do this unconsciously. Right? As we know from Dr. D'Angelo's work on white fragility and so on and so forth, whenever white folks are faced with anything that has to do with a discussion of race, they start practicing these methods, these actions that are designed for you to basically feel their uncomfortableness and refrain from the discussion, to either get you to stop discussing it or to deflect from it, right? These behaviors, these white fragility behaviors. Well, in our school systems, right, these teachers use specific tactics to inculcate in the minds of our children racial ideologies that ensure their dominance. Let us take a look at it. To quote from the article here, it said participants responded to challenges. Okay, let me back up, right? In keeping with the tenet of critical race theory that racism is an inherent and normalized aspect of American society, the author found that through previous life experiences, the participants gained hegemonic understandings about race indifference. participants responded to challenges to these understandings. In other words, Bree in this part is saying that they have developed a series of understandings that maintain white hegemony, right? So when challenged on these notions of white hegemony, Bree states here that they rely on a set of tools of whiteness designed to protect and maintain dominant and stereotypical understandings of race. Tools that were emotional, ideological, and performative. Peace, by the way, James, Show Nuff, and Black Man 903. I see you. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday. Do you understand what she's saying, family? They have developed, based off of their understanding of hegemonic, right, white dominated or white centered ideological and cultural mores. They have developed a set of tools that they use in their teaching tool bag to inculcate their racial dominance in our children. You feel me? This is important, fam. So if you're not certain, make sure you hit me up with questions in the chat. And don't worry, I'm going to open up the phone later and we're going to discuss this. You can ask questions then too. Just note that the author is not ascribing, oh, well, they don't know, or it's unconscious, or it's implicit type shit. The author says nothing about how these teachers gain this hegemonic ideology of their racial dominance. It says nothing about that. It simply says that they have that understanding, and when that understanding is challenged, they have specific tools that are emotional, ideological, and performative to help buttress their understandings of racial dominance over our children. And you're absolutely right, SM Bonner. White women are known for this, right? So here it gives some statistics. It says that 90% of the K through 12 teaching force as of 2004 was white. And almost half of the schools in the U.S. do not have a single teacher of color on staff, right? So many students will graduate from high school having been taught only by whites, with no change to this on the horizon, fam. This is important to note. Now, she states that her research asked the question, how do white pre-service teachers conceptualize race and difference? And what role do these conceptualizations play in maintaining existing racial hierarchies? Right? So in other words, Miss Picower, or Picower, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but it's probably Picower. Miss Picower here is saying that she wanted to discover what is their conceptions of race and differences between the races, and what role does their racial understanding play in their performative, emotive, and ideological maintenance of existing racial hierarchy. Shalom, Brother Paul. Peace to you. Welcome to Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Now, family, trust me, this isn't long, right? So, I will skip over some parts. But again, you have a link to the report. Also, I'm going to scroll back up here and give you the title. It was in volume 12, number 2 of Race, Ethnicity, and Education, right? The title of the article here is, or the article, this research article, is The Unexamined Whiteness of Teaching. If you want to look it up, download it for yourself, right? All right. Now, let's continue. According to Ms. Picower here, many teacher educators understand the connection between race and the readiness of teachers to build social political consciousness and cultural competence, right? Now, Layton's Billing contends that typically white middle-class prospective teachers have little to no understanding of their own culture, Notions of whiteness are taken for granted. They rarely are interrogated. But being white is not merely about biology. It is about choosing a system of privilege and power. You see, family, many of these budding teachers, because of the normalized racial ideology of them being privileged and empowered, they don't even question it. It's like telling a fish to question the existence of the water in which it swims, right? So Miss Picower here says that Ladson Billings' comment begs the question: how do white middle-class prospective teachers make the transition from being unaware of their culture to a critical understanding of the role of culture, power, and oppression? Damn good question, right? Damn good question. How do you take somebody who has had no incentive, no interest whatsoever to examine anything that has to do with race except through the stereotypes and lenses given to them as members of the hegemonic ethnic group, the dominant ethnic group in the country? How do you take them and make them understand critically the role of racial assignments, right? Racial connections, power, and oppression? Now, she talks about here some of the literature on race and teacher education, right? So she said that there is an underlying assumption in this literature that helping teachers to develop cultural competence and social political consciousness will help them to become better educators, right? So she discusses the methods of her research, right? This basically this part in every paper tells you how they set up the study, how they collated the data, and how they processed the data, right? She studied 8 white female pre-service teachers in their 20s who were enrolled in a course on multicultural education in the last semester of a childhood teacher ed program in New York City. All right. Now, Miss Picower is white, right? So she addressed, like, how was she able to get some of the information that she was able to get from these pre-teacher students? Well, it's because she's white. They felt safe to open up to her. Like, you notice how white folk will be talking amongst themselves, and amongst themselves, we're a bunch of lazy motherfuckers, no good niggas, etc. Right? But then when one of us show up on the scene, it's like, hey, buddy, how are you? Right? You know, that two-faced shit. Well, Miss Picower here is white. So she indicated that she felt that her whiteness actually served her as a benefit, allowing the participants in the study to open up. By the way, peace, Nyasha. I see you. Welcome to Sucka-Free Saturday. And to my brother Tazabah. Shalom to you, sir. So this is what she found. She found that various life experiences influenced the ways that they made sense of race and difference, right? Particularly through religious identity. Here's a quote from one of the participants in the study, who she calls Diane. She said, like, everybody is judged in some kind of way. Like, I've had experience where I've been judged because I'm Jewish. I mean, on the surface, I'm white, yes. I've had people say very negative remarks to me because I'm Jewish. So I feel like he, talking about Gary Howard, is making this a color issue when there's so much more to it than color. I think that made me mad too, because I know that I've experienced that too, and I'm not African American, unquote. So as you can see, that white fragility starts to kick in. Oh, well, you know, everybody gets judged by their race. I mean, yeah, I'm white, but I'm Jewish, and people have said stuff about me because I'm Jewish, and it really made me mad. So why are black people getting mad and acting like nobody else understands what they go through because I'm Jewish and I get, talked about too, right? So they use their religious identity to make sense of race and oppression, right? They also talk about their own ethnic backgrounds to basically create a hegemonic narrative about how ADOS people, but put people of color in general should be bootstrappers, right? Dawn talks about here her family's immigration experience. Like when my dad came here to America, he had a lot of struggle. He started working when he was 10 years old and didn't know a word of English. He pulled himself up and he worked hard. Now, he doesn't now go back to the people who wouldn't give him a job. And those were non-white people. He had to go through his family, and his family lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, couldn't afford a thing. And he got over it, and he's over it now, right? So the very first thing they try to do is tell a narrative. Well, we struggled. We know how hard it is. My great grandparent or my grandfather or my father came here from X and he had to work his butt off. Right. And he's not going back now with resentment and begging those folk who didn't give him a chance before. He was able to pull himself up by his bootstraps. But you note, family, she uses her father's story to normalize the experiences of everybody, right? Basically, her father's experience becomes essentially a caricature, a lens beyond which she sees everything. She takes her father's experience and uses that as what is the norm. That if her father done it, then everybody should be able to do it, right? But if you notice too, that also plays into this whole idea of ADOS people, being lazy, right? Like, there's so many opportunities in America, and if they would just work, they could be a success like anybody else, right? She's able to use this story that is a complete non sequitur for ADOS people because it doesn't take into account our specific history here in the United States. And she uses that as her normative view. Well, how do you think that's going to affect Dawn when she's teaching a class full of little black children? How do you think Dawn is going to actually be able to relate to those little black children? They come home or come to school hungry because they folks ain't got no money, no food in the refrigerator, right? And they've been struggling like that for generations. And one of her students walks up to her and says, "Miss Dawn, it's so hard. I know you want me to do my homework, but I fell asleep last night. I was so tired and I was just hungry. And I'm sorry I didn't do my homework." What do you think the odds are that Dawn is going to have any empathy for that little black child? Any sympathy for their situation? That's right. Goose egg, fam. She's not going to see that little child as somebody who's needing help, right? She's going to say, "Hey, you got to toughen up, buttercup. Everybody has it hard. All you have to do is just be willing to work hard, to put your nose to the grindstone, kid, and you too can be a success." Dawn will give absolutely no fucks. She will have no incentive to have anything in her that resonates with the experience of that little black boy that she's talking to. Peace, by the way, Easy Axe. Welcome to your Sucka-Free Saturday broadcast. Sean, I see you. Welcome. Ain't nobody said we was begging.
No. Who said we was begging?
Oh, who said? Yeah, ain't nobody said we was begging. I'll go off. But yeah, they didn't. See what I'm saying? Like, her Italian grandfather, her Italian father had opportunities once he learned the language to get business loans and shit. Wasn't nobody enshrining his inability to acquire a home, to attend the schools, to have his daughter Dawn attend the schools she want to attend, and so on and so forth. Nobody else.
A little something for my brother.
Thank you, fam, for putting something in the collection plate. I really do appreciate you. See, Dawn's father didn't have that experience. He didn't come to a country where his very existence was criminalized. As long as he went through the legal immigration process, Dawn's father could be reasonably as assured of some degree of social mobility as any other white-skinned individual in America. But because she has no incentive to look at other narratives other than her own, her father's story becomes the story that's applied to every ADOS person she comes across, including our children. Let's talk about it, right? Here she goes on to say, this is where I'm feeling a little bit nervous. See, that white fragility shit kicking in. Like, maybe I'm almost being a little bit racist because you just want to say sometimes, get over it. Like, get over it. It's 2005. Get over it. You know, move on. So what, you're black? So what, I'm white? If I get better grades in school, maybe I worked harder. You know, if I get a job, maybe I deserved it. Why does it always have to be like, well, they're the minority, let's give it to them? I'm done with that. It's time to start a new life, unquote. You trust that bitch to teach your kids. Your ADOS children who America has set up from the moment they were born to eat the failure, to be left with slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, debt peonage, convict leasing, lynchings, and the like. This is who gets to teach your kid. What do you think Dawn's attitude towards your kid's struggles, your kid's suffering is going to be? Right? Because whites deserve opportunities too. So little white kid in the class maybe gets a C. How many times you'll see Dawn standing over the little white kid's desk, giving them the little extra attention, giving them that little extra that they might need to get over the hump, to grasp a concept that little Jerome is not going to get. What amazes me, and what amazed the author of the article, is that even though she recognized that her mentality, her picture of the thing was racist in nature, she still believed in the concept that meritocracy was the order of the day. So although she knows that her being a teacher in a position of authority with the attitudes and the ideas and the ideology that she holds means that racism is propagated, that's not supposed to affect ADOS people. Especially our children who don't know no better. Nope. We're just supposed to overlook that. Because in spite of that, you still got a shot. Even though your very own teacher from K through 12 is hamstringing you by putting the lens that she sees the world into the heads of your children, by minting little black white supremacists. They also use hierarchical relationships, right? Many of these people, you have to understand, family, many of these Beckys that want to teach your kids have had little or no interaction with any teacher that was a person of color, right? So they've never seen, for the most part, somebody who is, say, ADOS in a position of authority over them. The only time many of them have had any interaction with us is with us in the inferior or the servile position. So with these women growing up into womanhood, the ideas that they have about what constitutes proper interactions between us and them requires that they are in the dominant or the superior seat and we're in the inferior seat. Right? She discusses here Allison, and Allison said, quote, "My grandmother had help. My great aunts always had someone in the house, and it was always someone who was like African American. And like, I look back and say, is this wrong? But like all of the individuals that like worked for my family for years and years and years and became part of the family, and we treated them like, although we didn't treat them like, well, they were there and they would serve us and they would help out and do the dishes, but it was like, it was just that was the way it was," unquote. Right? So she at first was trying to say, well, you know, we had black people around. right? And while they was helping us and, they was doing stuff for us, I mean, we treated them, well, I mean, like, we didn't treat them really good or nothing, but, they was there and they was helping us out. You feel me? By the way, shout out to you, Amr. Welcome to Sucka-Free Saturday. Exactly. This Becky shit drives me up the wall. Well, I understand what it means to be black. I had a black nanny. What the fuck? Hell, how many of these white bitches had wet nurses and stuff like that during slavery? Our women was suckling little white children at their teeth. That didn't stop them from growing up being Missy or Massa, did it? Let's continue, fam. Ms. Picower says here that through their life experiences and their interactions with individuals of other races, the participants gained and maintained hegemonic understandings of the world regarding race. Hegemonic means they were the bosses and everybody else was underneath them, right? Now, they used different stories and things like that too to position themselves in a place that requires the maintenance of white supremacy. Right? Ms. Picower says fear was by far the most prevalent hegemonic story shared. Oh, I feared for my life and that's why I killed him. He was a big black brute and he looked like he was going to rip me in half. Darren Wilson, 6'5", 240 some odd pounds and armed and got on bulletproof vests. But Mike Brown looked to him like the Black Incredible Hulk. And they ain't the only ones. The cops are not the only ones that pretend, or not pretend, but express a fear of ADOS people. Right? They use these situations where they felt uncomfortable, unsafe, to be able to argue that they need to be protected from connections, experiences with ADOS and other people of color. I fucking hate that term. If you notice, family, although Ms. Picower uses people of color in the report, isn't it funny that all of the shit she's discussing is primarily directed at black folk? Here's a story that she related from Diane. Quote, "We always knew that was the high school that was always in trouble. That was the high school that had really big black football players. I mean, my friends in general didn't want to go to their school for sports events because it was a little scary. Scary, like their attitude and stuff was different, seemed to be different than ours, and their behaviors and stuff seemed to be different than ours, so we avoided it. I think that you are always going to have those feelings." She continues, "If I'm walking home and there's a big group of black guys walking towards me, I'm probably going to cross the street. I don't know if it's the same if it was a group of white guys. Like, it would depend on their attitudes and things like that and how they are dressed. See that bullshit? It doesn't matter if the brothers is dressed in tuxedos, top hat and tails, bow ties, right? Walking down the street, speaking to each other in the Queen's English. No, none of that shit matters. I see a group of black guys walking toward me, I'm crossing the street. But if it's a group of white guys, well, now it depends on how they dress, what they're sounding like, what's their attitudes like, so on and so forth. I mean, they must be perfectly fine, whereas if they're wearing big jeans, then they are not fine. It's more professional, I guess, because you always hear about baggy jeans and hoodlums, and then you think, well, he must be. Fast forward a few years, fam, and Diane is a teacher in our high school. In a high school predominantly of ADOS children. How many times do you think that Dawn will be looking to see if our kids are causing trouble just because of the way they wear their pants? I mean, baggy jeans and hoodlums, right? She says here that Diane's childhood conceptualization of African American teenagers has carried into her adult understandings of black men. In other words, she keeps being fearful because she was made afraid as a child. At least that's what she's saying. And Ted, I agree with you. A lot of it is a guilty conscience. A lot of it is a guilty conscience. I really do believe that. A lot of these white folks ain't ignorant of what their families, what their people have done to ADOS people. In spite of the fact that they're hardly teaching any real history in school these days, it ain't that easy to escape the reality of race and oppression in America. We all drink it in with our fucking mother's milk. But for as guilty as these Beckys might feel about it, they don't feel guilty enough to change it. They don't feel guilty enough to question any of the dominant narratives that go towards the raising of them to hegemons and the lowering of us to subservience. Another idea or another group of ideas, right, goes into discussing urban schools, students, families, and so on and so forth, and the problems that we have because of the lack of resources in our communities and shit, right? So they already had a fear of ADOS people. But then on top of it, they weren't blind. They saw that our communities were dilapidated, that the infrastructure was eroded, that there were places that looked like bombed out war zones. And so they used that as a means to continue to further avoid us. Because remember, family, wherever we predominate, we are a contagion to resources. It's not even just that we're denied resources. Even when we get them, we make resources valueless. And that was by design. The whole process, fam, of redlining was to ensure that wherever we laid our heads, wealth would flee from us. Because it was already clear that whites had already a dominant wealth position due to 246 years of slavery, over 100 years of Jim Crow and all of that. How else are we to attain wealth except through contact with the dominant ethnic populace? But if we're kept away, segregated away, redlined away, dilapidated away, neglected away, then there's no fucking way to access the resources needed to overcome all of the problems that we have. We move into a community, and then they move out with all the wealth and resources, eroding the tax base. So what we're left with is their leavings, their leftovers, their sloppy seconds. But then on top of that, they use that narrative to frame us as deficient ourselves, right? So it stops being a systematic, institutionalized, legalized diminishment of an entire section of the American populace. No, it becomes we are that. We are neglectful, diminished. We have deficits, right? So they take our situation and use that to define who the hell we are. These are your American teachers, fam. These are the people your kids are getting exposed to. But here's one that really fucks me up. Whites as victims, right? Ms. Picower says, quote, in a third type of hegemonic story, whites as victims, participants attempted to show the ways in which they themselves, rather than people of color, were the real victims of racism. When asked for examples of racism that they had seen or heard, the participants typically shared stories in which white people had been verbally or physically attacked by people of color. Right? So when they discuss how we've been, quote unquote, racist to them, it is always anecdotal and individual, because that deflects from the fact that racism in America is systematic, is collective. In the words of our brother Professor Black Truth, racism is a team sport. When we talk about what America has done as ADOS, we're not fucking talking about white folks. We are talking about America, because America made it possible for any ethnic group to do anything to keep us at the bottom. If the government structure itself, the legal system itself, if the law enforcement apparatus itself, if the educational system itself, if the legal system itself was not institutionalized to set us up to be the outcast, it would not have been possible for them to continue to maintain white supremacy. But if you notice, whenever we have discussions about the broadness, the overarching umbrella of the injustices, the injuries committed against ADOS people by America, the very first thing white folks do is they make it about them. They take their own little individual incidents. Well, I got robbed by a black man. Yeah, I was in the parking lot coming from my job, and I was just minding my own business, and he just ran up on me and hit me with a pistol and took my wallet. So you niggers are no good. Wait, what? So one black man robbed you, and really, to be fair, in America, crime is a crime. You know, most crimes are crimes of opportunity, meaning that had there been a white robber in that area and you was caught slipping with your back turned and trying to get in your truck after long days of work, it could have been a white dude that robbed you just the same. But you wouldn't have looked at that white robber and thought, wow, us white folks are pieces of shit. That story of whites as victims only has relevance whenever you're talking about any victimization, brutalization, any subjugation, any bullshit and shenanigans that they've pulled against ADOS people specifically, but people of color generally. Stop me if I'm lying. Whenever we confront their nonsense, like Amra said, they want to start screaming, oh, black people are trying to get this white genocide. A white man can't say anything these days. We always have to worry about these niggers. No, what you need to do is own up to your shit and pay the debt. You simple-minded fools. But let's examine, family, the tools that Ms. Picower discovered that these teachers are likely to use to maintain the racial hierarchy between them and their student base. The emotional tools of whiteness are tools that are based upon their feelings, right? But remember, those feelings are derived from these narratives that they've set themselves up telling, right? The narratives of whites as victims, the narratives of, hey, my father did it, so why can't yours, and so on and all that old bullshit, right? So their emotional tools are going to be driven by the emotional responses to the narratives that they're telling themselves that preserves white hegemony. And as you can see here, one of these common ones is, I never owned a slave. Right? Why are you guys coming down on me about racism? I never owned a slave. I mean, the shit is almost reflexive at this point with all the white folks we contact as ADOS, isn't it? If you've been on Facebook, Twitter, any social media platform, and you start talking about reparations for the American descendants of slavery, shit, it never fails. It's like clockwork. Somebody's gonna come into your mentions, your comment section, and say, well, "What are you talking to me about it for? I never owned a slave." Right? The author of the article notes that the emotional tool of "I never owned a slave" was used to protect her hegemonic understanding of whites as victims when challenged with the notion that whites might indeed be the dominant race when looking at societal inequality. She also equated the analysis of race as a personal attack. So we are talking about systems, right? So you have to understand, fam, we're talking about systems, right? Broad-based, institutional, systematic things that have operated to the detriment of ADOS folk. But every white person, for the most part, sees it as a personal attack. Why are you calling me racist? We're not calling you racist. We're talking about the racist policies enabled by the United States government. Yeah, so you're saying I hate black people? Bitch, I just sit, right? Like, the shit gets frustrating, fam, because here we are thinking that they're being honest actors. I'm just going to keep it a buck. We entertain these bullshit arguments because we believe somehow or another it's just that white folks just don't know, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard ADOS people say, well, it's not that everybody's racist. No, they're just ignorant. They just don't know. They know. They all know. But the point is that they want to be able to deny the reality. In other words, the emotional tools, like stop trying to make me feel guilty about being white and all this and that and the third, is a way of gaslighting you. What are you talking about? I love black people. Oh, really? Well, explain to me how you love black people. Who'd you vote for last election cycle? How many politicians have you sat in front of and said, hey, you know, I really love black people. And I've been looking at the history of black people and I see that they've been systematically disenfranchised and kept out of their full citizenship for 400 years now. We should do something like reparations for that. When you start asking the real questions about how much they love black people, it's funny how all that love just seems to disappear. Right? August. Yeah, I got black people in my family. My aunt adopted a black kid. How many times have we seen deleterious outcomes of little black children adopted by white folks? Right? There are a lot of you who talk about Rachel Dolezal and you shit on her because she pretends to be a black woman. And I understand it. Right? I get it. That shit is frustrating because she can put it down and y'all can't. So trust me, I understand the argument behind which she gets opprobrium. But you know what's interesting, fam, that a lot of people didn't know about Rachel Dolezal? Is that her first kid was not her kid. Her first kid was her adopted brother. A black boy that her family adopted and they mistreat the shit out of. Her sister, beautiful sister, by the way, was sexually assaulted by Rachel's older white brother. Rachel took them in. She made it her role to protect them. She didn't just talk about she loved them. She put that shit to action. She wanted to learn about the culture they come from, about the people they come from, about the situations they face. Now, I grant you, it looks like she took the shit a little too far with her whole, you know, like trying to be ADOS, right? I get that. But she's shown by her behaviors the amount of love that she might have for particular individuals or for our particular ethnic group. There's a lot of white folks out there that can't say that. You feel me? They can't say that. Again, not a defense of Rachel Dolezal, right? But simply a nuanced understanding of the woman, right? Here's some of the ideological tools of whiteness. Here's one that I'm certain many of you have heard. Lindy, you asked the question, was it not the policy of the U.S. government that black people weren't official citizens until 1952? No. The official policy of the United States government is the Constitution first and foremost. And the 14th Amendment of the Constitution gave our ancestors and thus us citizens. Now, I would argue that they have used various legal, quasi-legal, and illegal means to deny us the full expression of our citizenship. But no, the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1866, I believe, is what gave us citizenship, gave our ancestors, the freedmen, citizenship, right? And so on. And Amra, I hear you, because didn't she sue Howard for something about the fact that she was white, right? Rachel Dolezal. So again, I'm not defending the bitch. I'm just simply saying there's nuance to this shit. But at any rate, no problem, Lindy. One of the ideological tools that they use is the phrase, now that things are equal. See, one of the ideological tools that these people will use is they're saying that we've made progress racially in America. Right? They'll say things like, well, what are you complaining for? Like, your great-grandparents faced lynchings and stuff like that. We're not doing that to you now. Things have gotten better. We've gotten equal. Right? I don't see the Ku Klux Klan coming knocking on your door, Jerome. What are you complaining about? So they're able to negate, or at least attempt to negate, our experience of racism in the United States of America. They're basically implying that, oh yeah, well, sure, historically shit was bad for ADOS people, but we're all equal now. Hell, this article was written back in 2003. When Barack Obama got elected, we went from equal to post-racial. You're not even supposed to bring racism up because this shit dead. We elected Barack Obama. Racism is dead. God bless America. Ain't that a bitch? Right? So before Barack Obama, right, the narrative was things have gotten better. We're all equal now. We had the civil rights movement and we're all equal now. They used that as a means by which to say, hey, we don't need to keep pressing this race thing. Like, we've made a lot of progress on it. We can back burner this shit, right? See here, the author of the article said the implication in Dawn's statement, as you can read above here, right? The implication of Dawn's statement is now that things are more better, the need for continued anti-racist work is unnecessary as people of color have more power in society and are now subsequently victimizing white folks. Isn't that the same damn thing that Amr said earlier? That it's guilty conscience is fear because they know what the fuck they done to us. At the end of the day, never forget, fam, never forget that for your fellow white citizens, your uplift in their mind always means their diminishment, because their undying fear that what has been done to us for 400 years, should we ever get the power to return the fucking favor, that we're going to do it to them in spades. That is a cultural white dominant narrative. Why is it that you think that after slave uprisings, revolts, insurrections, that even slaves that weren't involved in it were hanged, were beaten, were brutalized? Because it wasn't enough to just address the perpetrators, the participants in the uprising. They wanted to make sure that the idea of even thinking about going against them was wiped out of our heads. The very idea of thinking that we're going to fight for justice, that we're going to fight for our liberation, that we are willing to even shed blood if we must to get our due, should be as far from us as the East is from the West. So they took random ass slaves who had nothing to do with the uprising, and they would whip them to death or hang them. I've even heard stories of crucifixions during slavery. Because remember, family, the never-ending, undying fear of all of the native white citizens of the United States is that should ADOS people ever gain a degree of power, especially if that degree of power puts us sort of in a dominant position hierarchically over white folks, that everything that they've done to us, we're going to return to them in spades. Right? So now that we're so-called making progress, they have to first of all overestimate the amount of progress that we've made. Right? They have to play it up. So each individual step that we've had to drag kicking and screaming out of the hands of the United States government, they have to play it up as if it's a really big fucking deal. See, look, you niggas should be happy. You got Jay-Z. Huh? Like, Jay-Z's one nigga. We should be happy that he's got a few billion or whatever. Like, what? So they always have to overestimate the amount of actual progress that we've made. Here's another oxymoronic idea, fam. How is it that you're going to gauge racial progress if we can't ever discuss racism without you getting fragile and defensive? Right? So how is it that we ever come up to an understanding of just where we are racially in this country if the very idea of the discussion is playing the race card? Explain that shit to me. How is it that you come up with a standard that determines that we have either gotten better or worse if the very conversation itself is off limits? Could it be perhaps, fam, that the amount of opprobrium, of disrespect, of flat out hatred that ADOS, that ADOS people get is because all of these people cannot dispute the data, that they cannot dispute the numbers. They've been spinning us yarns, fam, telling us about how much progress we've made racially in America. We're post-racial now and everything is equal and this and the third. But ADOS puts the lie to that with every broadcast, with every sharing of a report, with every bit of data. We can see that we not only have not made any fucking progress, but we've actually regressed. ADOS has put the lie to a lot of gaslighting from both white folks as well as black folks. If we just bank black, buy black. No, that's not true. Here's the data that shows that even banking black, because of the deleterious effects of the return of black capital into white financial institutions, that even if we bank black, it's not going to be enough. Boom. Nobody likes ADOS because unlike every other movement, we're not fucking appealing to America's good moral conscience. It doesn't have one. We're not sitting here parroting narratives that talk about, oh Lord, it's so hard for us being ADOS. We share that amongst ourselves to enlighten ourselves. We talk about real ADOS life so we can stop telling lies about the truth of, stop telling lies about where we really are in this country. We share that with ourselves, but we're not using that to try to influence how America thinks, the dominant society thinks. No. For the first time in America's history, the American descendants of slavery is organized around the two things that they cannot fucking kill that belong to us. That is our ancestral lineage and the numbers. And it makes them sick. because it puts the lie to all of this talk of equality, that we're all on an even playing field now. Bullshit. We don't have no fucking friends. None. Because everyone who claims to be our friend believes that we're cracked for demanding justice when they believe we already have it. Here's another ideological tool that they use. And the report's almost done. We're going to talk about it, right? It's personal, not political. Oh, fam, that one right there is actually salient to us as ADOS. It's personal, not political. In other words, sure, there are white folks who don't like black folk. You know, it's those KKK and neo-Nazi guys that are the bad ones. But it's not like everybody in America is against ADOS people. You could have fooled me from the fucking data. Of course it's political. The political makes possible the personal. Politics is local. Politics is personal. This is why, as ADOS proponents and advocates, the very first thing that we stress to each other is that you got to understand politics in this country, because politics is what makes everything in your life possible. Without politics, you don't have a stable environment to be able to have a job, to have infrastructure, to own property, to have anything. We finally have twigged that it's not about trying to get individual white folks to like us. We don't care if the dominant white populace think we're all beggars, scumbags who are just trying to leech off of the government teat. We don't care. Because we on some political shit over here as ADOS. We don't give a damn if you like us for it. We're not here to be your buddies. We're not here to be your pals, friends, doonies, homies. None of that. We here with one thing and one thing in mind. The justice claim for the debt that's been owed our ancestors and to us. Full stop. Full stop. It is political, fam, not personal. This business that we have to conduct with the United States government as ADOS, this ain't personal. I know plenty of good white folk. I know plenty of bad white folk. I know plenty of good black folk. I know plenty of bad black folk. So it ain't about nobody's individual nothing. It's about the systematic policies shrined in law and custom that have kept me and my people wealthless and eating the failure of the nation, and what is going to be done about that. That is inherently a political question. They ain't got shit to do with what, Joe Schmo from Kokomo thinks about us. We could care less. Here's another tool that they use ideologically. It's out of my control, right? Like, I want to do something for black people, but the problem just seems so big. It's just so overwhelming. Like, how do we gotta make sure we don't say this, and we make sure that we do that, and so on and so forth, right? It's just too much, right? This goes back to the idea that white folks that actually do spend any time around ADOS people or people of color generally are actually going out of their way. They're altruists. They're doing us a favor, right? So the last thing they want to see when they're being charitable or doing us a favor is demands that they actually do more. They feel like that their very presence is being charitable, is being altruistic. They don't appreciate the idea that they might actually have to prepare themselves for the motherfucking student base that they're about to engage. She quotes here, she says here, Allison was indignant that she might be expected to know herself or her students when she was already anxious enough about teaching in urban schools that she previously identified as scary because of all the pressure she employed out of my control, a powerful ideological tool that maintains white supremacy because it justifies inaction on multiple levels, unquote. You know, I would love to see justice done, but how do we get it done? Like, who even qualifies? Like, how do we figure out who's ADOS and who's not? And how do we determine what the amount should be? And then how do we make sure, right? Oh, you guys are right. Like, but it's just so much. Bitch, shut up. If you had to live as us for a fucking week, you'd kill yourself. Funny. This country can figure out any damn thing it needs to figure out when it wants to. Shrub wanted a war with Iraq and Afghanistan. The economy made it happen. They wanted to figure out how to lock black people up under the drug laws or drug policy. Biden helped them work it out. And the legislation was passed to resounding applause. They trust me, fam. Any question that comes up in the United States, they can figure it the fuck out. So don't tell me that it's such a struggle to figure out who ADOS is through a reasonable standard, what the compensation should be, and to cut the motherfucking check. I don't want to hear that. That ain't no work. And if you're going to be teaching our kids, you need to understand not just your lineage and the power that your lineage has been able to accrue over the children you're about to teach, but you need to understand the overwhelming denigration, the denial of access to everything that those kids sitting there saying, "Good morning, Miss McCower," to you have faced. But you can't do that if you already think that your very presence in their environment is an act of altruism. Here's some more tools, family. Just be nice, right? You know, so like, I can't really do anything about racism, you know, so I'm just going to make sure that I'm not racist, right? I'm going to be really nice to all these little black kids and so on and so forth, right? There's no need for me to, you know, like my dad always taught me, treat others how you want to be treated, right? Your dad was probably in a motherfucking crowd full of people lynching somebody back during the era of Jim Crow, but hey, treat people like you want to be treated. In order for that to make any sense, Becky, you'd have to see ADOS people as people. The whole idea of, well, we just need to be nicer to them. Like, if we're just nicer to black folk, you know, they'll understand that we're done with all this racist stuff, and then we can all be like one big happy family. Yay! Fuck out of here. I can't relate. This one's great because this one just flat out says, well, you know what? I don't understand it. Like, I can't relate to what they've been through, so fuck it. Right? I just don't understand what's wrong with these little black kids. I just don't get it. I can't relate to where they come from. You know, these kids have lived through things and this, that, and the third. I can't. How am I supposed to teach them if I can't relate to them? So that increases apathy, inaction. Because whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you're right. Let me say that to you again, family. Whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you're absolutely correct. Chew on that one. Let's get to the last part here. These are performative tools, right? So we've gone from the emotional bullshit, right, to addressing the ideologies that these teachers continue to propagate in our students when they get their hands on them. And now we get to the tools that they do. These are things that they do. Performative means things that are done. So one of the performative tools is shh. I know, Taisha, but we really shouldn't talk about like that right now. I know you have a question about why that lady's got chains around her feet and stuff like that, and we'll get to it. But this is not the time. Like, that's a different, topic. We'll address that in this particular chapter, okay? Right? I hear you, Ed. I can, trust me. I saw the movie myself, right? And you've asked some really great questions about it, and we will eventually get to that. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We just need to, shh. Right? The very first thing they teach your ADOS children to do in school is to shut completely the fuck up. They can talk about cartoons. They can talk about Pokemons. They can talk about Xboxes. They can talk about any damn thing in class. They can talk about the trip they made to the pet store. As soon as one of them little black kids say something about race, silencio, por favor. Cállate la boca. Shut your mouth. We don't talk about that up in here. Right? See here, look. This woman, Karen, explained how she reacted if her family or friends made racist comments. As long as they're my friends, I would say something. I'm not much of a conflict person, so I'd either ignore them, walk away, or not say anything. I've never heard anyone say anything randomly who I didn't know because I don't think they would feel comfortable. Like I said, all of my friends are white, so I don't think they would say anything in front of anyone else because they know something might happen. This bitch just told you that how they talk amongst themselves, they're not going to talk like that in front of your kids. They're still going to hold the same ideas, the same ideology, the same emotional lenses that they see the world through. They're just not going to come out and say it. The very first move they make is shh, shh, silence. They don't want your kids to understand the reality of race and ethnicity in America for shit. I bet you they would teach ADOS children how to make atomic bombs before they teach them how to address race and racism and ethnicity in America. They would rather have your kids playing with nuclear isotopes than to actually have conversations that address the reality of their circumstances and situations here in the United States of America. Oh, animus, that's stone facts. Because I was one of those children. I was in gifted and talented. That's what the program they called it. Gifted and talented classes from kindergarten, actually pre-K, all the way through 7th grade. And they would let me talk about, work on, operate, utilize any damn thing I wanted. If I wanted to build a robot in class one day, they were on board. If I wanted to discuss covalent bonds in chemistry, cool. Right? If I wanted to talk about Newton's laws of motion, we're good. Let me open my mouth, though, about the incident I had with the little white kid out on the playground. No, Mark, it's not like what you think, okay? It's not like what you think. No, I know he used a word that he probably shouldn't have. He probably should not have called you that N-word, but it wasn't racial, okay? What that was just simply little Timmy was mad, right? And when little Timmy gets mad, he doesn't quite have the control, right? Automatic defense of little Timmy slighting me, calling me a nigga. Can't talk about that shit. Shh, shh. Silence. The next tool, performative tool, is to flash on you and try to make you have sympathy for them. I just want to help them. The whole Becky White savior complex. Right? Oh, that poor kid. I bet if we just invested just a little bit in him, he could be an amazing football player, a la The Blind Side. Right? How many fucking times have we had to watch this white savior drivel where when they portray ADOS families, our families are all fucked up. Kids get molested, turned out on the corner to sell ass for crack rocks, and so on and so forth. But this Becky, with so much love in her heart, comes out of nowhere and sweeps them away from all of the badness and lifts them up to their proper place. I just want to help that poor kid. That liberal Becky bullshit. Well, I love black people because I give every year to help feed the starving children in Africa. Meanwhile, this same bitch ain't got no problem coming into our community, go, ooh, nice neighborhood. We'll take it. She got her little pet Negroes that she comfortable with helping because, hey, she's not here to maintain the racial and ethnic hegemony and status quo. No, she's just here to help. How many of you, when your houses got kicked in during the crack era and you saw the SWAT team there with guns drew down on you, thought in your mind that, hey, I'm really glad these guys came here to help? Right? They always talk about, you remember in The Help, that little young girl, the one who wrote the story or whatever, thought she was writing the story so that she could highlight the true life of the housekeepers and nannies and shit that her families was interacting with. Never even realizing the disrespect she was showing them, that she, who had never experienced anything from these women but love, care, and concern, could even relate to what their stories actually were, let alone have the gumption to be able to tell it. But this whole I want to help them means that now they're above reproach. They're fucking saints. We don't have teachers in our schools. We just have a bunch of Joan d'Arcs. You can't critique them. You can't criticize them. Why? Because they're here to help you. You should be grateful that they're here teaching your little nigger kids. The article says here, and I highlighted it, from their nannies and housekeepers to their involvement in charitable activities, participants position themselves as wealthier and higher status in contrast to black people whom they constructed as poorer and needy, unquote. The participants continue to see themselves as good people for working with black people, thus maintaining the hierarchical balance of power in which they were the givers and black folk are the recipients. You can't say that I'm racist. Look at how much I do for you and your people. That a bitch. Oh, and for all of you out there who are anti-swirl, you're going to love this one. One of the other performative tools that they use is, I would kiss insert minority group here. Oh, yeah. When I was in college, I dated a black guy. I can't be racist. I was with Paul for like 3 years. What do you mean I'm racist? My husband is black. You see, fam? We've been a little too liberal with inviting motherfuckers to the barbecue, so to speak. We figure because a white person will have sex with us, will go out to eat with us, have a beer with us, will dance with us at the club, that means that they can't be firmly and fully in lockstep with the hegemonic white dominance idea that we have all been inculcated with. That somehow or another, this privileged few white folks escaped their enculturation to maintain the dominant racial hierarchy. We let white folks come into our neighborhoods and call us niggas. And we actually dap them up. Yo, Andrew, what's good? What's good, nigga? Andrew, what the fuck? Yo, that dude white. You gonna let him just call you a nigga? Oh, that's my homeboy. What? You feel me, fam? We done got a little too liberal with the idea that not all white folks is like that. Family, yes, they are. Say it with me. This is not a hate thing. So I want you to understand. Say it with me. Yes, they are. They are all like that. Every American is like that. It is the dominant cultural narrative that permeates everybody who's here. Everybody. If you come from outside the country as an immigrant, the very first thing you have to do is accept the dominant ethnic and racial hierarchy. They won't even let you be here for any lengthy period of time if you one of them rabble-rousing, agitating, justice-minded motherfuckers. Look at what they did to Marcus Garvey. They ran him out of the country. First they locked him up on some trumped up mail fraud charges. Then they promptly deported his ass to Jamaica. You ain't gonna come here as an immigrant and not buy into white supremacy, the dominant racial hierarchy. Hell no, you won't. You're gonna buy in like everybody else buys in. Everybody is like that. It don't matter how many times you bone them. It don't matter how many times you kick it with them. It don't matter how many times they done spent the night over at your house. It don't matter none of that. All of us are carrying the burden of the dominant cultural narrative of white hegemony. All of us. They are all like that. And the sooner, fam, that we get that idea into our heads, the easier it becomes to navigate this space. Right, August? Not all them white people. I know plenty of good white folk. Nah, what you know is plenty of white folk that haven't been pressed to take a side just yet. But let them think that their interests are under attack. Let them believe that they're going to lose by your uplift, and see how quickly those white folks change the game up on you. Trust me, I know. I used to be one of those kumbaya Negroes who thought, oh, racism is a thing of the past. I'm able to go anywhere and white folks like me. Everything's all good now. Right? I went to a meeting with white folks and they didn't cuss me out or call me nigger or nothing. Everything's cool. I used to be one of them kumbaya Negroes. On my Facebook page, I had 200 Facebook friends, 153 of which was white. I live in one of the whitest states in the goddamn country, on the left coast of it, the so-called most liberal part of Washington state. And I thought, wow, I'm living proof of just how far we've come in America. Getting decent jobs and shit, working in tech, having white boys be my buddies, having white girls wanting to fuck me. I thought I had made it. Not that I hated my people. I just thought that the whole thing was over with. And then on one fucked up ass day in Sanford, Florida, a 17-year-old boy gets shot in the chest and killed on his way home from the corner store with a can of iced tea and a bag of Skittles. And the more information I got about the killing, the murder of this young man, the more outraged and angry I became, the more upset that I became, the more heartbroken I became. Trayvon's life. It took his blood to shatter my narrative, to shatter the lenses that I was wearing on my fucking face. So with this newly cleared vision, and may my little brother Trayvon rest in power. With this newly cleared vision, I turned to all of those white folks on my Facebook page and poured out my pain. I expressed to them that, hey, upon discovery, upon further discovery, it's not just Trayvon. It's John Crawford. It's Tamir. It's Sandra Bland. It's Mike Brown. It's Walter Scott. It's Philando. And I'm pouring my heart out to these motherfuckers, my friends. Right? I've eaten with them. I've crushed on some of them, and some of them crushed on me. We've kicked it. We was buddies. We was pals. Till I started talking about the reality of ADOS life in this country. Guess what happened? All the justifications for why Trayvon should have been killed come out of the woodwork. Well, wasn't he like beating on George Zimmerman? You know, George Zimmerman has a right to defend himself. Well, you know, I heard tell that in their community they had a lot of break-ins, and you know, Trayvon was wearing a hoodie. I spent a week watching all those motherfuckers who tried to tell me my whole life that it wasn't about race justify the assassination, the murder of my little brother. And they didn't have nary an ill word to say about it. I closed down that Facebook page, deleted all those motherfuckers, and I ain't been on that page since. And ever since then, I ain't trusted a goddamn thing that no white folks had to tell me about racism, white supremacy at all. At all. At all. There is nothing that any of them can tell me. Nothing. I'm sad that it took the demise of my baby brother, my little brother, my fellow tribesmen to wake me the fuck up. But don't tell me, fam, that we're not susceptible to the idea that if they like us, right? If they will play around with us, if they'll hang out with us, if they're not dropping N-bombs and putting crosses in our yards, that everything is all good. I hope that I have been able to disabuse you of that notion. Even though they're not doing that, it is not all good. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to take Mark Black's word for it. Trust in the damn data. The data says that regardless of how much they like us or don't like us, we are at the bottom by every matrix, by every metric you can measure. And that is by design. These folk don't get to tell you that that's not the reality, because the data proves that's your reality. You feel me, fam? Yeah. I kissed a black guy. So, you see, racism is dead. I prefer to have sex with black guys. So you see, I can't be racist. Doesn't this mean that we're equal now? They fucked us during slavery. That didn't stop us from enslaving our ancestors, did it? They would pull through the hood during Jim Crow on the whole stroll, picking up sisters and buying pussy out of both draw legs. That didn't stop them from practicing Jim Crow. That didn't stop them from lynching us. That didn't stop them from locking us the fuck up. Family, sometimes the truth is harsh, but the truth is always necessary. This ain't about hatred of them. This is about knowing who and what the hell you're dealing with as ADOS. And who we are dealing with is a people who has shown clear antipathy to our uplift, that we are going to have to use the weapon of politics to put in line. That's who we're dealing with. Period. Point blank. The goddamn end. Now, in the report here, she talks about what the implications of understanding this is. But I can tell you for a certainty That the implication of all of this means simply this: that the moment your kids walk into that school building, from the moment they walk in to the moment they're walked out, they are seething in a sea of white hegemony, of dominance narratives, of stereotypes and stereotypical interactions. Your children cannot escape it because it is endemic by the fact that the people who constitute the dominant society, the hegemons, are the ones teaching your damn kids. Unless we, as ADOS people, be proactive in what it is that we're telling our children. And that means that rather than discouraging our children from asking questions, that we encourage them to question even us if they must in order to get the truth. Then that's what we need to do. Don't keep encouraging your children to be silent in the face of the data that suggests that their continued silence only means complicity to their continued injury. You teach your children to question every damn thing, every damn body, even you. Empower ADOS children to be able to have a lens that frames things in a way that is beneficial to their interests, and to completely discount any counter narrative that doesn't. Why? Because everybody else does it. Everybody else of every other ethnic group in this country has a dominant narrative that they tell themselves. That is their narrative, their story. And that narrative is always self-serving because by its very nature, prima facie, it has to be self-serving. It is time for ADOS, for the American descendants of slavery, to tell our children a narrative that serves our interests, to remind them that they are children of the impossible, that they were never supposed to be here, and that we are grateful that they are here, and we have fighting to do, that we have work to do, that we have ancestors who suffered through the crucible, the hells of slavery, and were never repaid what they were owed for what they faced. And that we walk in their shoes. And this is a place of honor. And this is a place of dignity. And this is a place of respect. And everyone, including Miss Becky, your second grade teacher, is going to put respect on your name, or she don't have the right to talk to you. That's how we address this acculturative process of imbuing our children with white hegemonic domination narratives. We create a counter narrative. We tell a different story. A story that shows that you are the descendant of some of the baddest motherfuckers that ever existed in the United States of America. And not only that, not only are you the descendant, but you're the heir, because this country owes you a debt it has never paid. And that needs to be the narrative you hammer home to your children, no matter what Becky Ann, what Diane, what Annette, or any of the rest of the motherfuckers is telling your kids. I know y'all feel me. Come on, fam, chime in. It's your turn. Right? 425-296-1980 is the number. I broke it down for you, fam. We are acculturated continually through the media, through some of our religious teachings, through the legal system, and now we've seen clearly through the educational system to continue to play the silent partner of white supremacy in this country. To sit back, shut up, and suffer what we must. And Black Dollars, you said, I think blacks need to understand the difference between racism and hatred. I agree. Racism is a policy. It's a process. It's systematic. You can drink beer with a white dude who don't hate you. But does this mean that when it comes to forwarding your interests, to seeing your uplift, that white boy's going to be on board? I don't think so. The evidence suggests that that's not the case. As a matter of fact, the evidence suggests that these people, when faced with the evidence, are going to display white fragility and attempt to deflect, deny, and discredit your position. And yes, they are all like that. They are all like that. All of them. And this is not about hatred. I don't care. I have no hatred toward any human being in my heart at all. This is simply business. What ADOS has to do with America is business. I don't care what any fucking citizen has to say about it. I don't care if they hate me for it. I don't care if they think I'm a moocher. I don't care what they think about me. The only people I'm interested in hearing from in this particular matter, this particular grievance that I'm attempting to redress with my government, is my people, our government, and that's it. We spend too much time, family, giving too much credence to too many people who have no fucking say in how this thing is going to go down. They don't have a say in it. That's right. We got to stay on code. And part of being on code is the understanding that at the end of the day, we are truly all we got, ADOS. And that doesn't mean that we need to hate anybody from anywhere else. This doesn't mean any of that. This means that we're done being fucking mules and the rocket engine for growth and success for everybody in this country while our babies can't eat. You don't get to come here to my country and take anything off the table for me and then look at me like I ain't shit. You eating off my plate, but you telling me I need to have an eye for Mother Africa. What? What I look like trying to repatriate to Africa when Africans are trying to bring their ass here? There's no Caribbean country I can go to where they be like, welcome home, fam. We've been waiting for you. No! They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing here? We all need to stop buying into this whole Pan-African shit and take care of home. Right? I truly mean that, fam. I'm not throwing no shade to Pan-Africanists. But I believe that until we've all addressed our own individual situations where the hell we at, we ain't got no damn business talking about what we gonna help somebody else do. Black people in this country have been behind every push for justice that you can name. We were instrumental in helping to bring down apartheid. Right? We were giving resources and volunteering and shit for what happened over in Rwanda between the Hutu and the Tutsi. Nobody loves the EFF more than ADOS people when they talked about taking the land back from those white fuckers that stole it from them without compensation. Expropriation without compensation. Every ADOS person I know had their fist up in the air talking about shout out to the Commander-in-Chief Julius Malema. We have been behind and supported everybody's push for justice for themselves. We have been the whole damn nation as well as the whole damn world's mules. Nobody else. ADOS. Us in America. Jamaicans ain't riding that goddamn hard for everybody around the world. Guyanese ain't riding that hard for everybody over in Africa and the Caribbean. No, you see, if you want to see that, you come to America. You got motherfuckers doing reggae concerts and shit and shouting out, shout out to everybody from Dominica. Shout out to the Virgin Islands. Shout out to Jamaica. Shout out to Antigua. Right? Shout out to Barbados. And they're giving the goddamn concert in Chicago and don't shout out black people. ADOS folk. No, the only group of black people anywhere that has tried to uphold justice for everybody is us. Fuck that. It's time for some self-care. until we get ours and what we need to do for ourselves. I can't call it for anybody else. Calling from 413. It's your man Mark Black. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what's on your mind?
This is Double C,
Cease.
straight from the state of Massachusetts.
You tried to come clever
What
with it,
you
Cease,
mean?
but I ain't mad at you, fam. How you doing, brother?
What's going on, man? I just called real quick before I get ready for work, man. But this is a post-racial America. What you talking about? Obama was our reparations,
Cease, you ain't shit, fam.
and never will be.
Yeah, I mean,
Racism doesn't exist anymore.
dude, and I'm ashamed to admit it, man, that I bought into the hype. Look, fam, we like I said, the truth is important. We have to start telling the truth on this thing. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
us that feel better about our situations as ADOS because we bought into the narrative that we have somehow made it. Right? As long as we don't look at the data, we can continue to believe that narrative. You feel me, Cease?
Oh, yes, and then you hear some people, well, we get to go out with white people and white girls. Racism is over. And it's like, that's not true at all. Um, like Massachusetts is supposed to be very liberal. Massachusetts is a very purple state, okay? There's some parts of Mass that are democratic, but most of it is conservative.
But fam, what about
Um,
Boston? The average mean net worth of black folks in Boston of ADOS folk is $8, fam. But they
Listen, man,
liberal.
Boston still have sundown towns.
You feel me?
Hell yeah. Where I live at, I live 2 hours away from Boston, okay? I'm in the western part of Massachusetts. And I live near sundown towns. There's two places called Athol and Orange. Orange is famous for having that film Castle Rock being filmed there, which was a miniseries by Stephen King.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So, Athol and Orange were sundown towns. This is how bad it is. If you applied for housing, now in Springfield, Chicopee, Westfield, no, Springfield and Westfield and Holyoke, you're on the list for 8 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's the average. Athol and Orange, 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And that's one of those towns that you don't want, if you don't want your car broke down to, you don't want nothing. You want to keep going straight through.
Yep. Wait a minute,
If
Massachusetts, that's just right alongside Mississippi, right?
Oh no, it's up north. Us Northerners have
No,
a
I
special
know,
type of
fam.
racism up
It
here.
just it fucked me up because one of the narratives that we as ADOS people tell ourselves is that all the bad shit that happens with ADOS people is still related to the South. What they don't understand is that Plessy v. Ferguson which was what instituted Jim Crow legally.
Yeah,
Was a law, or I should say, was a ruling by the Supreme Court. It became the law of every state in the country, including northern states, including states that hadn't came into the Union as of 1898, right? So, like,
facts.
all this shit about, oh, if we just, deal with those racist crackers in Mississippi. Well, no, because you got a bunch of racist ass crackers in Washington State. You got a bunch of racist ass crackers in Idaho. You got a bunch of racist ass crackers in Maryland. You got racist ass crackers in fucking Maine. Like, you can't go anywhere in America
Well,
and not experience ADOS reality.
look at that governor in LePage in Maine. He had a book of all the criminals named D-Rock and Money Shot and everything else. Talking about black folks, bringing all the crime into Maine. And let me tell you something real quick. All right, I got family in Mississippi. You know they told me why they like Mississippi? Because the racism is very overt. If white folks care about you, they'll let you know. They don't, they'll let you know.
Yep.
Massachusetts, you can't tell. And honestly, for years, I couldn't tell.
Yeah. It's real
'cause you
easy
grew up
when
with
you
around
live
it.
when you living amongst those liberal white folks, fam. I'm telling you, for all of the fear that ADOS folk have, I'm gonna ignore this call, fam. Call back after Brother Cease is done. But for all the fear that ADOS people, and it's rightful fear, right? We do have a fear of the South,
Yeah.
and that fear is earned. Okay, the South was the killing fields for many of our fucking ancestors. Okay, so this is not to diminish in any way the feelings you might have for all the southern states. But fam, the fear that we have for all the southern folk, all these shit kickers, all these, rednecks, these overt racists, you should actually be more afraid of the white person that's standing next to you kikiing, right? The one that's holding your hand when you go out to the club and so on and so forth. Because them liberal white folks are just as deadly to you and you never see them coming. They disarm you with kindness. I call them soft racists. You feel me, C's?
Well,
They
true.
soft
Most
racists,
definitely.
right?
Hmm.
They're the snake that will sidle up next to you, have the little rattle kicking off, do the little wiggle dance, and you look into their eyes and get all mesmerized, and next thing you know, they done bit your ass, right? Whereas,
Hmm.
the South is full of motherfucking anacondas. You know what I'm saying? You gonna know right off the bat. You see what I'm saying? What's going down in the South? But man, like I said, I live in one of the whitest states in this country, in Washington State, and I got to tell you, boy, you don't know racism until you experience that shit up here. These motherfuckers will deny you a job, claim you overqualified, smile in your face, and claim, by the way, I'm glad to hear you voted for Obama. I voted for Obama too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
You see what I'm
Mark.
saying? They'll redline your ass into oblivion up here and smile at you while they do it. They'll make you think
Mark,
that it was actually your fault you didn't get the house.
you must forget where I live, Mark.
No, I'm
We've talked
telling.
about this several
See,
times.
I'm telling for the people who don't know, right? Because there's a lot of black folk that live in
Oh.
areas that are predominantly black folk, right? We got a lot of brothers and
Hmm.
sisters in here who, watch from DC, from the ATL, from B-more, right? From Philly, and so on and so forth, right? Areas where they predominate. Boy, you don't know racism until
Okay.
you done lived around mostly white folks. Holy shit. It's some
Especially
next level
Russians and Polish.
shit.
Man, I'm telling you. Listen. You know where I work at. I've said it ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
I got the poorest white folks. I'm working. Got two forms of income. The poorest white folks with nothing think they're better than me. I ain't gotta listen to you.
Yep.
You can't do nothing to me. I'm like, okay. you know, you gotta sit there because they think you have to sit there bearing grinning. But I have a zero tolerance policy, and they get shocked when I enforce that policy. And my white boss, who's a 68-year-old white man, will back me.
Yep. See,
He's like, wait
fam,
a minute, you kicked
isn't
him
it
out?
isn't it funny though? As
Hmm.
ADOS has come to the fore, the people that are attacking us are the minions. You notice you're not really hearing from the people in the country that's got pulled, right? The ones
Yeah,
that actually are running the show, they're not saying shit. Because what they're
of course
hoping
not.
is that their little plantation bunnies and minions like Joyanne Reed, Roly Polies, Boule Ass, and all the rest of them, all these bootlicks and the Democratic, sheepdogs are going to get this thing in line, right? Fam, you heard it here first. The great hope of the Democrats is that they're going to be able to sheepdog ADOS people back onto the motherfucking Democratic plantation. And I said what the fuck I mean. They are hoping that by us being discredited, slurring us, like talking about, Yvette's involvement with PFER and this, that, and the third, that by throwing out all this shit at the wall to see what sticks, that they're going to get ADOS to shut up. You see what I'm saying? Right? But what
Hmm.
they're going to find out, fam, is that we finally have the language with ADOS, with the American descendants of slavery, to not only tie ourselves together in a way that cannot be broken through our heritage and through our lineage, but also a lens to interpret every damn thing we see, right? Because ADOS has said, focus on the data, right? Pelosi can sit here and try to call us names and try to throw slights at us and digs at us, but she can't dispute the data. The ones that really are in charge of this country know that the debt's owed. They know it's owed. They know they've long known it's owed, right? But they're hoping that we can somehow or another be shunted off, right? That we can be our efforts blunted, right? They're sending out the minions, the little plantation minions, the bootlicks, the butter biscuit brigade, their white pets, and so on and so forth to attack us. But what they don't know is that ADOS already pulled their whole card. This isn't the same type of transformational moment or movement that we've had previously. You can't kill the leader of ADOS. Because even if you do something to Yvette or Tone, or if you brothers and sisters who roll with Tariq or Professor Black Truth, you can kill all of them, but you can't kill our heritage. You can't kill our lineage, and you sure as hell can't kill the damn numbers. You can't kill the data. And it's got them shook, ideas. Fam. It's got them shook. See, I'm going to let you have the last word, man. Open up the line for somebody else to give us a call. Go ahead and speak what's on your mind, fam.
I'll say this, though. We'll get our just due. I believe, and I could be wrong, that the rich people, are setting themselves up. They'll cut us a check because they'll know we can't hold our money no more than 2 hours in our own community. What we have to do, I believe, is we have to smarten up, stay buried in the data and not lose focus.
That's right.
Because this is our shot.
This is it. This is our moment.
I could be wrong.
No, you spot on, fam. This is it. This is our moment right here. This is what the ancestors have been waiting for. It's for ADOS.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's, no, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate what you're doing. I'll support you all the way any way I can.
That's my man. I love you, man. I appreciate you too as well, fam. You call in anytime. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, sir.
You too, sir.
Yeah, fam. That they're hoping that the sheepdogs, the Al Sharptons, right, the Rolly Martins, the used to be Tom Joyners and all the rest of them can get these niggas back in line. That's what they're hoping for. They hoping that, they might have a little temper tantrum right now, but they'll come back. Because right now, ADOS is like the woman who's trying to get out of the motherfucking abusive relationship and seeking shelter. The Democrats is trying to sweet talk us. You had Bernard Sanders talking about, all this and that. But then he's talking about, we're going to do the 10-30, 10-20-30 thing. Yeah, no reparations, Bernie, no vote. You ain't exempt. Right? You got Kamala casting about for any damn thing she can cloak herself in to try to get her numbers up. They wasn't prepared for this, fam. They wasn't prepared for the fact that we are saying at this point, no black agenda, no black vote. Fam, understand, I'm not telling you not to vote. That would be irresponsible as hell of me to do that. What I'm saying to you is to vote your interest and your interest only. Not vote for a motherfucker you want to have a beer with, right? Not vote for somebody because they can dance to Dougie, right? Vote your interests. Bernie ain't going to be speaking on no reparations. Fam, he's against it. He's made it clear he's against it. In my opinion, Bernard Sanders is canceled. Now, that's me. He's canceled. Chameleon Harris, canceled. Corny is canceled. I'm still giving eyeballs to Marianne Williamson so far because she's the only one, even though her numbers are just woefully off like a motherfucker, right, is the only one that's even keeping the conversation in the political sphere for the Democrats and us with our pressure. Four two five 296 1980, fam. I got time for another call. Somebody else was trying to call in. I want to hear from you. Yep, Jim Crow Joe canceled. Yeah, they tried to say that we never attacked anybody but Kamala. Then I went on Twitter and posted a video I recorded where I distinctly went in on Jim Crow Joe. They gonna try us, fam. They gonna try us. But we stay united. We're single issue voters, single issue advocates. Are you prepared to support reparations, including but not limited to cash payments to the American descendants of slavery? Full stop. That's it. Your political work, fam, has just become easy as pie. No, I don't think. Fam, no. Bernie will do the motherfucking Democratic two-step around reparations. He's already doing it, and his ass is just a candidate. I can't even get him to talk about reparations without, cracking a face, pulling a face, or getting all indignant during the damn campaign. I sure in the hell don't trust his ass in the White House. But it don't matter. Because you see, family, ADOS has come to give America an offer it cannot refuse. There is nobody on the Democratic side of the House who can win without our vote. Nobody. We'll hand the country over to Republicans, either through directly voting for Republicans, because yes, we do have some ADOS brothers and sisters out there who are Republicans, and they should get love too. I get sick of us trying to shade ADOS family who vote Republican. They have reasons why they believe that the Republicans might support their interests. Respect that. You don't have to like it. Respect it, right? But the Democrats for damn sure owe us a whole heaping hell of a gob more than what we've been getting. And until they start having some act right, we ain't got no act right. I don't care about Green New Deals. I don't care about the red-eyed, blue-breasted swamp booby. I don't care about climate change. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about immigration. I don't care about nothing. And neither should you. Your political work, fam, we just made it as simple, as GED basic as we can possibly make it. Do you support reparations, including but not limited to cash payments for the American descendants of slavery? It's time to do work. That's all you got to do. And get out there and talk to other ADOS people. That's all you got to do, fam. That's all it takes. Get out there and get in your family face. Remind them of their heritage, their lineage. You feel me? Fuck me. I would vote against Feinstein 3 times if I could get into the ballot box. Anybody would be better than that bitch. Did you hear that the Justice Democrats, the Ilhan Omar, AOC, right? Ayanna Pressley, group that just got elected and so on and so forth, right? Did you hear that the Justice Democrats might be looking to primary people like Clyburn, like Maxine Waters, like Sheila Jackson Lee? And they tried to make it into a racist thing. They said, well, the Justice Democrats is a white-led group, and they're trying to go against black politicians. Well, who cares? If these black politicians actually did something for their damn constituency, they wouldn't have to worry about a fucking primary attack from any direction, whether from the left or from the right. But because these bastards have claimed to represent us but have done nothing for us, well, guess what? Don't come looking for us to save you from the Justice Democrats. You look good getting primary to me. The Congressional Black Caucuses can hold their own nuts. I'm good. I don't give a damn how many Justice Democrats run their ass up out of town on a rail. They wasn't doing nothing for me while they were sitting there anyway. The conscience of the Congress. Ain't that a bitch? Hell, at least the Justice Democrats would actually talk about, I don't know, justice. I'm not a big fan of AOC or any of the rest of them, but I did note that when Ilhan Omar was asked, does she support reparations, her answer was unequivocal. It was yes. Caller from 919, it's your man Mark Black. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what's on your mind?
Yeah, this is my first time like calling into a show. Usually I'm on Twitter.
What's your name, fam?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
What's your name, fam? Talk to us.
Yeah, my name's Tasha. Usually I'm on Twitter.
Tasha! Yes, sister, I've been waiting on you to call in and chop it up with your man. How you be?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to do some late night work.
Nothing wrong with that, sister. What's on your mind? Talk to us.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about other stuff, but I noticed that you brought up Bernie Sanders and the reparations and how he keeps pushing the 10-20-30 plan.
Yep.
And the thing that people need to know about it, I mean, it's flawed in and of itself when you just look at it at the surface because, you know, first off, they say, well, it's like 20% below poverty level for like the past 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it, like when I look at 30 years, that's talking about the 1990s, but gentrification has been occurring ever since the early 2000s. And what that does is that pretty much skews the average income while decreasing the percentage of people who are like below the poverty level. And the thing that I hate about the whole discussion, because I can't remember his name, I know he did interview Bernie Sanders, but you know, when you have people who have platforms and they ask the basic questions, but they don't push back on that program, it's almost like, you know, they, Bernie Sanders and the plan that's been, I guess it's supposed to have been developed by Clyburn, even though it's been used before, it's like their feet are not held to the fire.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you have those people with platforms it's all about having access. But if you have people who are like low information voters, they're not going to look at those plans critically.
Yep. Tasha, let me ask you a question, sister. I've been on some stuff lately, and I'm certain that you've seen it, right? Where I've been talking about reparations plus, right? In other words, I don't think we necessarily need to show as much antipathy to the Democrats' plans and shit like that as we do. I just think that we need to say, okay, that sounds good. So why don't we do reparations first, then that, right? What do you think about that, sister? What do you think about the idea of saying, hey, those plans sound great, so why don't we put this reparations baby to bed? Then we could do the Green New Deal, right? So in other words, talking about what we won't vote against, you know, what we'll vote for, right? Reparations plus. Tell me what you think about that, Sister Tasha.
I mean, well, I'm not against any type of socialist plans, but the thing is that even with the candidates who are pushing more of like a socialist policies, they're always trying to use these universal policies to resolve things that are more like racial issues. So it's almost like, well, I don't want to say that we have to pigeonhole them to do reparations, but it's almost like we have to go there, because if not, they're always going to find these plans that are like peripheral policies to deal with issues with poverty. And the thing is, you can't use class-based programs to resolve issues that are tied to race.
Facts.
Because, I mean, in our capitalist system, I mean, racism is pretty much embedded within it.
Yeah.
And we already seen, even though, Obama has reneged in terms of some of the things, many of the things that he promised, but we already see the fallacy in, rising tide lift all boats, because that's not the case.
Right. We not even in the boat. So a rising tide means plenty of us drown rather than prosper.
Right.
I'm right there with you, Sister Tasha. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe that for us, we need to be single minded of focus, period, right? Reparations, period. However, as a stratagem, I would also argue that rather than being so shady, because sometimes ADOS folk with this hook that we have on the data, we don't take kindly to people trying to spin us yarns. You know what I'm saying? But rather than being so shady, we can say, hey, those are great ideas. If we take care of this reparations thing, I think we could have a basis for a point of agreement to where we can do some of the stuff that you guys would like to do, right? In other words, sister, what I'm thinking is that we can frame our justice claim in multiple ways, right? We can be shady. We can bring the heat, bring the smoke. Your brother loves to smoke like no other, right? But I also believe that as a stratagem, we can also talk about how appealing some of their plans or ideas might be to us, but we need this reparations thing to be taken care of and squared away before we can even be a part of any discussion for any universal shit.
I agree, but I'm more that person. I look at each policy on the surface, and I assess whether it's going to actually be effective in terms of the thing to be resolving. Not to stay on the phone for too long.
Oh, you good, sister. You good. Like I said, I've been waiting for you to give me a call.
I've been in the know of universal basic income even before Yang proposed it.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, without breaking monopolies and having some sort of rent control, it's not going to resolve the issues of those who are, pretty much bottom caste, because all that has to be done is for the cost of living to be increased.
And your UBI don't mean nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a major problem with Yang's interpretation of a UBI. I do believe that with automation and AI coming to the fore, that a UBI is something that is going to have to be discussed as Americans more sooner than later. Because look, there are a lot of us who are in the position that the horse was at the turn of the 20th century. Horses, it wasn't that you couldn't get jobs where you used horses. Horses were unemployable. Right, with the advent of industrial technology, automotive technology, and so on and so forth, we went from having millions of horses in America to having a few 100,000 in a matter of a few decades. Not because horses don't have a use, it's because they're unemployable. And with the advent of automated transportation, automated manufacturing, AIs operating in the medical sphere, the legal sphere, even in coding. There's a lot of folk who gonna find themselves without the means of being able to earn their daily bread short of a UBI. However, if there's no UBI that is going to be tied, first of all, until we receive reparations, no matter what happens under a UBI, we're screwed, right? So we have to press home for that no matter what anyway. But without the UBI being tied to productivity, because like the growth of the GDP is tied to productivity, right? The more productive the working populace is, the greater the growth in the GDP you see, from year to year, year in on year in, right? Well, here's the thing. If the UBI takes away all of the rest of the safety net, because like oh boy said, the UBI is going to, part of the reason, the way he's going to fund the UBI is by the elimination of things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, so on and so forth, right? So that's essentially a low-key way of saying we're going to end all entitlements for just a universal distribution of bread, which again isn't necessarily bad in and of itself. But if that UBI is not tagged to productivity, meaning that the more efficient that these AIs become, the more savings that businesses are able to gain, that they subsequently have to pay into the system to maintain the UBI.
Right.
Yep. Thank you, Show Enough. I appreciate you, fam. Without that, sister, that UBI conversation is dead in the water. And that's just facts.
Yeah.
Yang needs to be on reparations plus UBI, right? So this way, poor whites and other people who are currently unemployable under the current system won't feel like that they lost out on a racial set aside set specifically for ADOS people, right? I mean,
Right.
the Democrats could do this thing in a way that would ensure that we got our due while still doing something universal. See, that's what I'm saying. They act like that they're mutually exclusive. Oh, well, if we do this, we can't do reparations. My fucking ass, you do reparations first. Then we could talk about transforming the economy via the Green New Deal. You dig? You do reparations first. Then we could talk about the introduction of a UBI or a GBI, right? You do us first, but without doing us first, you can't expect us to be on board with a damn thing you're trying to do.
So that's why a lot of them needs to be replaced, because they're beholden to their donors.
Oh, most
and they're
definitely.
supposed to fight for their own agenda.
Yep. And whoever is paying, in this current milieu, whoever is paying the who has the gold is making the rules.
Right.
And that's gonna come to bite America back in the ass. You do realize that, because at some point, Americans, all Americans, not just ADOS, we're the canaries in the coal mine. All Americans will be living essentially an ADOS life, and when that happens, I can guarantee you, all bets are off. You see what I'm saying? All bets are off.
Well, that's why, things like UBI is being brought up, because a lot of millennials, they're not living anywhere near to what their parents live.
Yep.
And that's even going above and beyond maybe just attaining a bachelor's degree. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sister Tasha, thank you, sister, for your call. I want to let you have the last word. Was there anything else you wanted to talk to us about today, fam?
Not really, but I'll leave off, we definitely need to teach children to think critically and question everything.
Yep.
I think that was probably one of the biggest mistakes of the baby boomer generation, teaching kids to just, work, have your head down,
yep.
and just be indoctrinated and not question anything. So
yep.
I'll leave with that.
Thank you, sister. As always, I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you for your call, and you are welcome to call back in anytime. You hear me?
All right. Okay, thanks.
Peace, sister. Fam, the sister's right. I'm about to end the broadcast, but I'm glad I ended it on that note. Fam, when I talk about how we raise our children, when I talk about the use of corporal punishment and its apparently clearly deleterious effects on our children, the unwillingness to have intellectual rigor ourselves so that we can answer the questions of our children, and thus we don't encourage them to question, the refusal to pay attention to what our acculturation is and being willing to change that acculturation in areas where it is maladaptive is going to be obstacles that we as ADOS people have to face before we can really do anything of substance, before we can really do anything of major power. We need to address our children. These are the ones who are going to come up behind us and continue the fight. But we can't be on this kumbaya shit, post-racial shit, where we're thinking that racism is over with. No. Our babies need to understand that the struggle continues. If we're not able to help them get the bag, or if we're not able to get the bag for them, we need to be training them to go after the bag. And I'm not talking about this bootstrapper, striver, aspirational bullshit like our boomer forebears fed us Xers, go to school, get an education, get you a good job, work there for 30 years, and you too could be straight. Nah, we've long discovered that's bullshit. That ain't working. Right? No, when I'm talking about teaching our kids to get the bag, I'm teaching our kids to fight for this justice claim, to cleave to their lineage, their ancestral lineage as the American descendants of slavery, and to play politics. Because that's the only way we got a shot at doing everything that we all claim we want to do. So family, thank you all for joining me here on Sucka-Free Saturday. I, your brother, the perennial outsider and one who loves you, am grateful for your eyeballs, your financial support, your time, your efforts, your energy. Keep doing the work, fam. Do not get disheartened. ADOS is on the rise. And until the next time I speak with you, family, as always, I want to wish you all love, peace, prosperity, and power. Real power to our people.